This reminds me of when an individual a while back argued online that there was no such thing as the right and left-hand paths. That the idea of separate paths was bullshit, and if you believe this, it proves you're a neophyte. Only someone who's never stepped off the right-hand path would say that, because we who have been on both paths know there's a difference. This is just a babbling of one with a myopic perspective.
I think he's talking about me. Hey everyone, Joe March here, also known as Sorcerer, and most likely he's not talking about me because I have not been relevant in the community for many, many years. However, it is true, if we want to take that word for word, that several years back there was a person online who said that stupidly. That would be me. So I don't know if I just am also one of the people who made this stupid hot take back in the day. But I would like to specify that I don't believe that now. I no longer feel that the left and right hand path are both just different words for the same thing. I definitely did when I was younger and less experienced. Emphasis on younger as well. But I don't feel that way now. I would say if I had to categorize what I do now in one of the paths, it would definitely be left-hand path, and that I definitely veer away from what's considered right-hand path processes now. So this is a direct result of the work I did with Tiamat, the direct result of the work I did with the Morgan, and everything that's happened to me over the last 4+ years. So back when I made my old videos, when my channel was hot shit, I didn't have that experience yet, so I could absolutely be what he's talking about. A person who, at the time, had not experienced what it truly meant to do more than dip your toes into the left-hand path and didn't understand the differences, and thereby made that statement. But what I would also posit is that what was actually happening back in those days for me is that I was doing exactly that. I was dipping my toes into what some people would say is left-hand path philosophy or schools of thought, and starting to do things that were heterodoxical or against modern traditions. And because I hadn't yet embraced that as just a path of being, it was somewhat frightening to me. So to me, it made more sense to continue to cling on to some portion of what would be considered the right-hand path and the left-hand path at the same time. And I think that's why my brain back in those days came up with the middle path as what I always said that I was on, that I was somehow able to walk the fine line between these two paths, and in so doing be able to get the best of both. But it really doesn't work that way. And if you don't let go of all of the dogma and bullshit, you can't learn the lessons that I would consider now to be left-hand path, now that I've gone through my workings with Tiamat and whatnot. So it does sound funny to hear those words again, and to remember that I did used to think that. So whether he was talking about me or not doesn't really matter. The truth of the matter is that at one point in time I did believe that, and that when I look back on it, it does sound stupid. And I just felt, after hearing that earlier this morning when I was listening to his video, maybe I should make a video or something and specify that anybody who's been following me for a long time, that is not something that I believe anymore. No, I would say the paths are very different. I would refrain from trying to tell someone else what path they should be on. But I've obviously become someone who's enamored with individuation, which is definitely a left-hand path process. I suppose it's possible to do that through the right-hand path, but not the way that I do things. Everything is about self-transformation with me now. That's what my practice has become, which is very left-hand path. I feel like some people will hear me say that and they'll think that I mean like edgy, gothy shit, and that's not what I mean at all. They're going to think that I mean like EA co-wedding, and I don't mean that shit either. They're going to think that I mean you have to work with demons, and I don't mean that shit either. There's a lot of people on the left-hand path that are edgy boys. That's fine. I mean, hell, I've been an edgy boy. There's a lot of people on the left-hand path that do work with demons and the like. But you have to remember that the whole point of the left-hand path is that it throws off the dogma. It lets go of all these rules, and it doesn't bow down to authority figures. And as a result, anyone who is actually on the left-hand path has their own unique style. That's just the way it's going to work. So if somebody is an edgy boy who likes to talk to demons, they're probably going to be on the left-hand path, because the right-hand path doesn't support that. Now, some people might get into the argument of whether or not people on the right-hand path follow the herd and people on the left-hand path are individuals. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, as they put it. Like, I don't want to say, like, that's not what it means. Because, you know, everybody has their own definitions for things. Some people's definitions for left hand and right hand are going to be different than mine. But I feel like that's a bit of a straw man. I feel like saying that everyone on the right-hand path is just herd animals is like kind of trying to bolster our own ego on the left, more so than it is an actual reality. But I think what people are trying to get at with that is that people on the right will follow tradition and follow dogma to a fault from our point of view. And because we were almost all once like that, we find it distasteful, and that's why we paint it in such a bad light. So I would never say that someone should go on the left-hand path if they feel comfortable being a right-hand pather. I don't think it's like we all need to follow one set of everything. But of course I think that way because I'm on the left-hand path, and that's just the way you think when you start to understand everyone as individuals instead of seeing us all as some one-size-fits-all type of situation. And I think the reason that in the past I kind of had this thought that it was all one and the same is because I was starting to think like someone on the left-hand path, and I was understanding it from a perspective of someone who still understood the all and our collective as all being one, and I was trying to personify that more than I do now. Whereas now I see that as a little less personal than I did back in the day. I was starting to recognize that everybody was their own unique individual, but I still wasn't letting go of all the traditions yet back then. And so to feel comfortable, I would say I was in the middle. But what I've learned since then is that the instant you step off of the right in any way, and this is not right and left like politics, this is the right-hand path, left-hand path. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's plenty of videos and resources on it. The instant you start to push against the dogma and the traditions and do your own thing, you've already broken taboo in a right-hand path tradition. You're already a left-hand pather in their eyes. So there isn't really a middle path that does both, like I thought back then. There's the left-hand path, which is almost everybody who's not the right-hand path, and there's the right-hand path, and that's pretty much it. And if you embrace that left-hand path and you're able to find your own unique individuality, cool, that's how we advance. And if you are not able to do that, you may find yourself swirling in nihilism while trying to find a purpose in life. But that's fine. That's just the different processes. Some people will swirl their way back over to the right and find a purpose that someone else gives them, and some people will be able to find their own purpose through existentialism. And I believe that makes you every bit as left-hand as somebody who conjures up demons and spirits and tries to push against every norm that ever exists. You can't say that someone has to break every norm in order to be on the left-hand path, because if you did that, then the left-hand path would be dogmatic. The left-hand path isn't dogmatic by nature, therefore there are no rules. You do whatever. And that doesn't mean that there's no morality. That doesn't mean you aren't responsible for your own shit, but it means you recognize that morality is subjective and that you need to determine what matters to you, what you believe is right and wrong, and that becomes your own internal moral central compass of your own. It doesn't mean everyone else has to follow your beliefs. It literally becomes your own self-understanding, self-actualization, which leads you to better self-understanding. I feel like I don't really need to go on from here because my channel has talked about these concepts a lot. I've just not referred to them as the left-hand path. I think I refrain from using that term a lot because of the connotations that people have put on it. But if we're going to talk frankly and honestly, I would, yes, consider myself a left-hand path occultist. Thank you very much, and good night. Oh, and did I say until next time, safe travels? Until next time, safe travels.